I was washing my wife's favorite mug, the same one I'd used every night since she died. My son hadn't spoken to me in over a year, until tonight. He invited me to dinner, said it was time to forgive and forget. The roast smelled just like Nora's. The wine was too good to be a peace offering. And then a message flashed on my phone. Stand up and leave. Say nothing to your son. The message glared at me from the screen, its letters stark and screaming in silence. Stand up and leave. Say nothing to your son. No name. No explanation. Just a command that sliced through the warmth like a scalpel. For a long moment, I sat frozen, the glass of wine poised at my lips untouched. Logan and Elise were still laughing, their voices distant, muffled, like sound underwater. The dining room felt colder now, though nothing had changed except everything. I tucked the phone under my napkin, heart hammering like it used on nights when Nora was sick and the ambulance sirens took too long to arrive. Something in me, old primal, the part that had survived war, bankruptcy, and Nora's funeral, whispered, "Move. Now." Logan reached across the table, pouring me another glass with a practiced smile. "You always loved that vintage," he said too casually, eyes flicking to Elise. She nodded, her grin too perfect, her hand too steady as she passed me a fresh plate. Beef roast, perfectly seared, and suddenly, I couldn't remember the last time Elise had ever asked me what I liked. I forced a smile, nodding in thanks, but inside my mind was unraveling. Who would text me that? How would they know I was here, at this exact table, at this exact moment? I stood up slowly, the chair legs groaning against the hardwood, as I masked my fear with the calm of age. "I just need a moment," I said. "Restroom." Logan blinked. "You okay?" "Just heavy meal. I'm not as young as I used to be." I chuckled. Elise's eyes followed me too long as I stepped out of the room. The hallway outside the dining room stretched like a tunnel, lined with designer artwork and minimalist lighting. But my mind wasn't on the decor. I moved past the guest bathroom, kept walking toward where I guessed the kitchen might be. Then I saw her, the housekeeper. She was washing glasses at the sink, crystal tumblers that had held our drinks moments ago. She didn't turn, didn't flinch, but I saw her shoulders tense when I stepped inside. She didn't say a word, just kept scrubbing. And right then, I knew she knew something. The kitchen's back door was ajar. A sliver of night air brushed my cheek, like a cold warning. Without a word, I slipped outside, the door shutting behind me with a whisper. The backyard was as immaculate as the rest of the estate. Trimmed hedges, artful lighting, not a single leaf out of place. I walked toward the rear gate, moving faster now, heart racing. No footsteps behind me, no voice calling my name. Just that text message burning in my pocket. At the edge of the property, beneath a street lamp, I ordered a car, not to Windermere, not to any home, just away. My phone buzzed again. A second message. "If you stay, you'll lose more than your name. Leave now." That's when I knew this wasn't paranoia. It was survival. The gate clicked shut behind me with finality that didn't just belong to wood and metal. It sounded like a warning or a betrayal finally locking itself behind me. My breath steamed in the night air, sharp and shallow, as if my lungs already sensed what my mind refused to believe. The street was quiet, too quiet for a place this expensive. Even the trees lining the sidewalk felt like they were listening. I walked half a block before pulling out my phone again, fingers trembling, not from age this time, but instinct. The rideshare icon spun slowly, for minutes out, but it felt like I didn't have 4 minutes. I paced under a flickering lamppost, watching the mansion from a distance. Its glowing windows looked like theater lights on a stage where I was never supposed to exit early. Behind those walls, Logan and Elise were probably laughing, toasting, preparing. Preparing for what? My phone buzzed again. A call, not a text this time. Unknown number. Local area code. No contact name. I hesitated, then answered. The voice was soft, neutral, but its weight crushed my chest like concrete. "I hope you would leave. You did the right thing." "Who is this?" I asked, my voice rough with confusion and cold. "I can't tell you that, but you were in danger tonight. Real danger. I looked back at the house again, that towering shrine of wealth and success, and suddenly it felt like a mausoleum. My son invited me for dinner, I said, to make peace. A pause. He also prepared documents giving him full ownership of your businesses. All he needed was your signature. The words knocked the wind out of me. I stepped backward onto the curb, heart racing. What are you talking about? Your whiskey was laced. It lowers resistance, makes people agreeable. Open, it doesn't knock you out. It makes you say yes. My mouth went dry. I remembered Logan's insistence on pouring the drinks himself. Elise's gentle prodding. The way she never let the glass stay empty. Their smiles warm on the surface, but waiting for something. You're lying. I whispered. You wouldn't have left if you believed that. The voice replied. And they were right. Who are you? I asked again, but the call had already ended. The car pulled up. Silver sedan. Driver looked bored. Music low. Dashboard light blinking. I got in. Where to, sir? My lips moved on their own. Take me back to Eastbridge. Fernway Avenue. Now. The car pulled away, and as the mansion disappeared behind me, I realized I wasn't just leaving a dinner. I was escaping a setup I didn't even know I was part of. The car's heater clicked softly, warming the leather interior, but I still felt cold. Not from the autumn wind, but from betrayal. It crawled through me like something alive, something I'd never shake off again. The driver hummed along to some low jazz station, unaware that the man in his back seat had just escaped his own son's trap. I stared out the window at passing silhouettes of houses and fences, but all I could see was Logan's face and how perfectly he had smiled while handing me the poisoned glass. I pulled out my phone again, thumb hovering over the call history. The number was still there, blocked, untraceable. A voice without a name, but a warning that saved my life. I scrolled down further and paused. 3 missed calls from Logan, 1 from Elise, and a text. Dad, where are you? Elise is worried sick. Please come back. I stared at those words, knowing full well that the woman worried sick had been guiding my hand toward a signature that would have cost me everything. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a notepad app and typed 2 lines I'd never thought I'd write. My son tried to drug me tonight. My wife would have seen it coming. The driver glanced back through the mirror. You okay, sir? I nodded. Just tired. But tired didn't cover it. I was unraveling. My mind replayed the evening in sharp reverse. The way Elise had remembered my favorite dish, though I'd never once mentioned it to her directly. The way Logan had checked his watch, twice. How Maria, the housekeeper, had looked at me, eyes filled with something between guilt and urgency, and said nothing. And the wine. I hadn't even finished 1 full glass. So why had I felt drunk? The whisper of logic returned. Soft but sharp. They weren't toasting a reunion. They were numbing your mind. Outside the window, we passed an old train station bathed in flickering sodium light. Something about it triggered a memory. Nora, waiting there once in a green coat, holding coffee in both hands, cheeks red from the cold. She had always trusted too quickly. I had always trusted too long. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Incoming call. I answered without speaking. You got out, the voice said, low but edged with relief. I did, I replied, but I still don't know why. There was a pause. Then, because your son is in deeper debt than you can imagine, because he borrowed money from people who don't send reminders. They send warnings. Because tonight wasn't just about stealing your business. It was about buying himself 11 more days to stay alive. The words hit harder than I expected. I sat back, stunned, silent. Then I asked slowly, how do you know that? The voice took a breath. Because I work in that house, and I hear more than they think I understand. I didn't speak. My heart knew before my mouth could form a name. The voice hesitated, then softened. I'm Maria. My grip tightened on the phone, the weight of everything crashing into a single name. Maria? I whispered, my voice barely audible over the hum of the road. The woman who had silently poured my water, who smiled kindly but never once looked me in the eye. She had known. She had seen it all. "I wasn't sure you'd believe me," she said, "but I had to try. They don't treat people like people in that house. Just roles to be used." I swallowed hard. "How long have you known?" 3 nights ago, Mr. Logan left his office door open. I was vacuuming. They thought I didn't understand English. They were laughing about which signature they'd fake if you passed out too soon. The car turned onto a quiet road flanked by tall pines, branches bending slightly under the night wind, like they too were eavesdropping. "They talked about your business," Maria continued, her voice shaking. "Elise researched everything. Your signature, your contracts, even your favorite meals. She called it harvesting sentimentality." I almost dropped the tray when she said it. I closed my eyes and let my head fall back against the seat. The pain wasn't from shock anymore. It was the ache of confirmation. "He's my son," I muttered. I taught him how to tie a tie, how to ride a bike, how to hold the truth like it was a sacred thing. "And he sold it," Maria said softly, "for silence, for money he doesn't even have yet." The car slowed at a red light. I could see the familiar skyline of Eastbridge just beyond the rise. My part of the world, not rich, not polished, but honest. "What do they owe?" I asked quietly. $2.3 million, she said, "and it's due in 11 days. The number didn't even feel real. I had made that kind of money over 2 decades, with sweat, 14-hour days, and a wife who never let me give up, and Logan had burned through it in backroom poker, and debts to men who didn't believe in second chances. "Maria," I said, voice firmer now, "why did you help me?" There was a long silence. Then she said, "Because you were kind. Because when I brought you a glass of water, you said thank you and looked at me like I existed." I stared down at my hands. The same hands that once carried Logan on my shoulders. The same ones now trembling with betrayal. "I can't prove anything," I said slowly. "Not yet, but I know what they were planning. And I won't let them try again." Maria's voice dropped to a whisper. "There are documents hidden in the study, pre-filled legal forms. The wine bottle is still on the table. They didn't clean fast enough." My chest rose with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. "I need to go back," I said. The driver glanced up through the mirror. "Sir," I met his eyes. "Change of plans. We're returning to Willow Ridge. Park 2 blocks before 118 White Hill Lane. Stay out of sight." His brows furrowed. "You sure?" "I'm not," I said quietly. "But that house holds every piece of what's left of my name, and what they tried to steal." I ended the call and looked out at the city I had built a life in, modest, hard-earned, and honest. Then I turned back toward the dark horizon, where 2 familiar faces waited behind designer smiles, and one hidden signature away from ruining me. The driver said nothing as he veered the car into a quiet U-turn, headlights slicing through the mist rising from wet pavement. I sat forward slightly, hands clasped between my knees, my mind running colder than the wind that rattled the windows. We were going back to the lion's den, not to forgive, but to confront. I wasn't the same man who had left that house 40 minutes earlier with hope in his chest and wine on his breath. Now I was carrying the weight of truth, so heavy it bent my spine. The kind of truth that splits a man in 2, father, businessman, victim, witness. Every passing street lamp stung my eyes, not from light, but from what I saw between the blinks. Nora's face at Logan's 3rd birthday, Logan's first paycheck held up like a trophy, the moment he whispered Dad after his voice first cracked. All those snapshots now curled at the edges, burned slightly by what I now knew. When the car slowed 2 blocks from the mansion, I paid the driver extra and asked him to wait. Engine off, lights out. He looked at me uncertain. "You sure you want to go back in there, sir?" "No," I said flatly, "but I have to." The wind bit harder as I stepped out. It was the kind of cold that seemed to carry questions, the kind that made every breath feel like an interrogation. The estate stood ahead, golden lit and grotesque in its grandeur, a trophy built on buried trust. I didn't approach the front this time. Instead, I circled along the garden path, where only hours ago I had walked out unnoticed. Every bush, every decorative stone, felt like it remembered the deception that had unfolded beneath its watch. The back door was unlocked. Of course it was. These weren't people who feared consequences. They assumed no one would dare challenge them. Inside, the kitchen was empty, but the faint clinking of dishes told me Maria was still here, somewhere nearby. I stepped silently through the hall, my shoes muffled by the runner rug that probably cost more than a week's payroll at my restaurant. Voices drifted from the dining room, tense, clipped, anxious. He's not answering his phone. I told you it was too soon. No, he was just dizzy. He probably wandered off. He saw something. Logan, stop panicking. Just, we'll give an hour. Worst case, we draft another version. Maria can... Their words cut off as I stepped into the doorway. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Logan stood first, his expression a theater of relief painted over panic. Dad, thank God. We were worried sick. Elise rose slower, her face pale, arms still resting on the table as if frozen mid-scheme. You okay? She asked, voice velvet, hands trembling under the linen napkin. I looked at them, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see my family. I saw actors on a crumbling set. I went for a walk. I said flatly, needed air. Of course, Logan said too quickly. Come, sit. Elise made dessert. The glasses had been cleared. The decanter now held a lighter pour. The whiskey bottle, the one I brought, was still on the table, nearly empty now. I moved toward the seat they had prepared. Same one, same position. They had reset the stage. But the show wasn't theirs anymore. I pulled out my phone and laid it gently on the table. I need to ask you both something, I said calmly. Just one thing. Logan blinked. Of course, Dad. I turned my gaze toward Elise. If I had signed those documents tonight, would you have told me what was in them afterward? Or would you have let me wake up in a house that didn't belong to me anymore? The silence that followed didn't last long, but it was long enough. The question hung in the air like smoke, slow to clear, impossible to ignore. Logan's lips parted, but nothing came out. He looked at Elise as if hoping she'd speak first. She didn't. Instead, she lowered her gaze to the table, fingers slowly curling the edge of the linen napkin, twisting it like she wished she could twist time itself. I don't know what you mean, she finally said, voice a brittle whisper. You do, I replied, steady, quiet. You both do. Logan let out a shaky breath. Tried to smile, failed. Dad, look, I think you misunderstood. No, I cut him off, gently but firmly. What I misunderstood was thinking this dinner was about reconciliation. I pulled a chair back, but didn't sit. My knees were steady, my voice clear. I know about the documents. I know about the drug and the whiskey. And I know exactly why you needed my signature tonight. The silence shattered like glass. Logan stepped back, knocking into the corner of the table. Elise went pale, her mouth trembling, no longer acting but unraveling. You don't understand, Logan said. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I wasn't going to hurt you. You already did, I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The weight of it was louder than any scream. I built everything you see. Every brick, every paycheck, every late night. I built it for you to inherit, not to steal. Dad, they threatened me, Logan blurted. They said if I didn't pay by the 13th. So you drug your father? The words landed like punches. I didn't know what else to do, he shouted, desperation stripping away the last of his polish. You wouldn't give me the money. You made me beg last year. You said no. You left me with nothing. I left you with a chance to rebuild, to take responsibility. You left me to drown. And you decided if you couldn't swim, you'd pull me under with you. Elise stood up, her voice shaking. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just trying to survive. I finished for her, at any cost, even if it meant selling out the only man who ever believed in you. Their expressions shifted, not to guilt, but fear, because now they understood something deeper than anger. I didn't come back to argue. I came back with witnesses. Behind me, a soft knock on the doorframe. Maria stepped forward, quiet but certain, holding a small leather folder in her hands. Inside, the documents they thought were hidden, marked Dated. Signed by no one. Elisa's knees buckled slightly. You betrayed a man who treated me like a human being, Maria said, her voice low. I couldn't let that happen. From outside, headlights swept to the front window, slow, silent. A second later, there was a knock at the door. 3 firm taps. No hesitation. And for the first time all night, Logan went completely still. The sound of those 3 knocks echoed through Grand Foyer like a heartbeat slamming against silence. Logan didn't move. Not a breath. Not a blink. Elise backed away from the table, her hand grazing the edge of a crystal glass that toppled but didn't shatter. It rolled slowly, like time stretching too long. I didn't turn to answer the door. I didn't have to. Within seconds, the entrance creaked open, heavy with sliding back with ceremonial weight. 2 men stepped inside. Plainclothes officers, jackets marked subtly, badges flashed once under the chandelier's gleam. Behind them, the night poured in, colder now, sharper. A wind that carried justice on its back. Logan Farewell? One asked, voice low but laced with certainty. And Elise Farewell? Logan's voice finally returned, breathless, paper-thin. What's going on? You're under investigation for attempted financial fraud, the officer said, stepping further into the room, as well as allegations of chemical coercion and elder endangerment. Elise gasped, stumbling into a dining chair. No, wait, this is a mistake. We were just having dinner. You were hosting a trap. I corrected, not with anger, but with clarity. The second officer nodded toward Maria. You the witness? She stepped forward quietly, folder still in hand, chin lifted. I am. Logan snapped. She's the maid. You're going to believe the maid. She's the reason I'm alive. I said, and she's more human than either of you were tonight. The first officer raised a hand. We have recovered partial documents, audio recordings, and a contaminated bottle. We'll need both of you to come with us for questioning. Contaminated? Elise blinked, shaking her head. Too fast, too frantic. We didn't drug him. He drank too much. You laced the whiskey, I said flatly. A compound that lowers resistance. It doesn't knock you out. It makes you agreeable. Slower. Suggestible. Logan's knees buckled slightly as the truth cracked through whatever walls he had left. Dad, I was going to pay it back. I was going to fix it before you ever knew. No, I said, voice shaking but grounded. You are going to bury me beneath my own signature and build your escape on the ashes. His mouth opened again, maybe to explain, maybe to beg, but it was too late. The cuffs clicked softly around his wrists, a sound far too gentle for the weight of what they meant. Elisa's sobs finally came, brittle and sharp, as she dropped to her knees beside the fireplace. She didn't reach for Logan. She didn't reach for me. She just wept for what they lost or for getting caught. I couldn't tell. As the officers led them out one by one, the lights in the chandelier flickered slightly, not from power, but from presence. Something had shifted. The truth had stepped into the room, and it wasn't leaving. The front door closed behind them with a deep, echoing thud, the kind that settles into your bones and tells you something is truly over. Through the wide bay windows, I watched the police vehicle ease away from the drive, its lights muted but its presence absolute. Logan didn't look back. Elise did, just once, eyes wide and wet, not from regret, but from the shock of a curtain finally torn down. The mansion fell silent. Not a dignified silence, but the kind that hums with the ghost of every word spoken and every lie told inside its walls. Maria stood across from me, still clutching the leather folder, her knuckles pale. She didn't speak, didn't need to. We both knew this night would be replaying in our minds for years to come. I walked to the dining table, drawn by something I couldn't quite name. The wine bottle still sat there, half empty, the deep amber liquid catching the low light. I lifted it, slowly as if it might bite. In its reflection, my face looked older than I remembered and harder. The man staring back wasn't naive anymore. I poured the remaining whiskey into the crystal glass they'd prepared for me earlier. The faint sediment swirled at the bottom like dark snow in an upside-down globe. It wasn't just poison, it was intention, calculation. A signature they wanted me to drink. I don't know how you stayed in this house, I said quietly to Maria. Her voice was steady, but soft. I stayed because I had nowhere else to go. Tonight, that changes. I set the glass down. What happens to them next is the law's work. But what happens to us is ours. She looked at me then, not as an employer, not as a man she'd rescued, but as someone who understood survival the same way I did now. I took the folder from her, feeling the weight of what it contained. Proof of betrayal, leverage, truth. It was heavier than it looked. The clock in the hallway chimed once. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. The sound didn't belong to the officers. Maria's head turned toward the noise, eyes narrowing. Someone else was here. Maria froze. So, did I. That sound, a door, sharply shut, was not the cautious rhythm of police. It had weight, purpose, the kind of finality that belonged to someone not sent. But, coming, I moved toward the foyer, instinct tight in my chest. Maria followed, quiet as breath. Outside, past the frosted windows, a shadow emerged beneath the amber streetlight. Broad shoulders, slow stride, no urgency, but full awareness. Whoever they were, they knew exactly what they were walking into. Maria's voice barely rose above a whisper. That's not law enforcement. No, I said. It's someone who waited until the law left. The figure reached the front steps and stopped, just long enough to look up. And for a flash, I saw his face. I didn't recognize it, but I recognized the eyes. Hard, calculating. Eyes of a man who'd watched people beg before they bled. I stepped back from the window slowly. Maria gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. Logan owed money, I said quietly. People who don't send overdue notices. He said he needed more time, she murmured. Maybe this was a deadline. A knock, not like before. This time it was slow, deliberate, 3 booming strikes. Not asking for permission, demanding presence. I didn't move toward the door, but I didn't back away either. I picked up the leather folder, slid it under my arm, and turned to Maria. You need to go out the back. Take the documents. Call Detective Garvey. Tell him what's happening. Now. And you? I need to know how deep this goes. She hesitated. What if they're not here to talk? I looked toward the door, where a 4th knock never came, because whoever was out there knew he didn't need to knock again. I opened the hallway cabinet and pulled the spare house keys from the bowl Nora always kept filled with candy. Lock the back door after you, I said. If I'm not out in 10 minutes, don't come back. Maria stared at me, eyes shining but steady. She nodded, grabbed the documents, and disappeared without another word. The house fell quiet again. I walked slowly to the front door, each step heavy with memory. Not fear, not quite, just a deep knowledge that once a father has survived his son's betrayal, there's not much left to fear. I opened the door. He was already waiting. He didn't flinch when the door creaked open, didn't smile, didn't blink. He just stood there, as if this moment belonged to him, as if the house wasn't mine but already collateral on a debt someone else had failed to repay. He looked mid-40s. Scar under his right eye, shaved head, a brown leather coat with rain stains at the shoulder seams, and in his hand, not a weapon, but something worse, a folded envelope. Evening, he said, his voice like gravel under weight. Mr. Farewell, I presume. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He looked past me into the house, eyes scanning like a man reading inventory. Mind if I step in? You already have, I said. He chuckled, one breath humorless. Fair enough. He stepped inside without waiting, the air tightening around him, not like a storm, like pressure, controlled, tactical. I closed the door behind him slowly, deliberately. The deadbolt felt useless. Your boy's in trouble, he said, tossing the envelope onto the console table. He's got 10 days, 11 if I'm generous. And tonight was a solution. I replied, watching the envelope like it might explode. No, tonight was a gamble, he said. One last dice roll with your name on it. He circled the foyer like he'd been here before, admiring the paintings. The crown molding, the silence. I told him he should have come clean, he muttered. But sons don't always listen to advice, especially when they think they can outsmart everyone. He turned to me fully now. His eyes weren't angry. They were professional. We want our money, not your house, not your blood. Then why are you here? To make sure you understand what happens if this all slips into lawyers and police reports. I stood still. It already has. He tilted his head, not surprised, not angry, just processing. That's a shame, he said. Then he reached into his coat pocket, and for a half-second, I thought it was a gun. But it wasn't. It was a photograph, folded twice, worn edges. He placed it on the table beside the envelope. I unfolded it slowly. It was Logan, but not here. It was Logan at some dingy bar table 2 weeks ago. Cards, cash, men I'd never seen. One of them had a missing finger. We document everything, he said calmly. We don't trust memory. I kept staring at the photo, the sound of my son's voice from years ago ringing faintly in my ears, the high-pitched, hopeful laugh of a boy who once built Lego towers on the living room rug. And now this was him. This is what he'd become. We won't touch you, the man said, but we will find other ways to collect. And we're very good at finding pressure points. I looked up at him, and for the first time that night, I smiled just a little because he had no idea that I'd already called someone who didn't know how to pressure back. He watched me study the photo as if measuring how much of my soul cracked with each second. But I didn't flinch. I remembered something Nora once told me during a hard winter when we nearly lost a house. Fear only controls the ones who forget what they're made of. And tonight, I remembered. I turned the photograph over and placed it on top of the envelope he'd brought, sealing them together like the closing of a file. I appreciate the message, I said, voice quiet but pointed. And I understand what you're saying. He tilted his head, amused. I'm not saying to scare you. I know, I replied. You're saying it because fear is the only currency you have left. He didn't smile this time, but something in his face shifted. A flicker, curiosity, maybe, or respect, not common in men like him. You think the law is going to protect your son? He asked. I don't, I said, but I think the law is going to bury the trail that leads to me. He took a slow step forward. Just one. I didn't move. There's a difference between survival and sacrifice, Mr. Farewell. What you did tonight, it might protect your name, but it won't protect your blood. His voice dropped into a low threat. You think you've outplayed your son. You haven't. You've just made yourself visible. I stared at him for a long second, then said, Do you know what a man builds over 37 years of clean business? He raised an eyebrow. He builds a reputation that people don't question. I continued. He builds a circle that watches for him even when he isn't watching for himself. And when someone like you walks into a man's house waving shadows and shame, I pointed toward the hall behind him. He already made the call. Right on cue, the sound came, faint, then clearer. Footsteps. Not mine. Not Maria's. Boots. And then the edge of a badge appeared past the wall. Plain clothes, but unmistakable. Detective Soria stepped into the room with 2 officers behind him. Hands calm, posture relaxed, but alert. Evening, Soria said. You're not supposed to be here. The enforcer didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He slowly exhaled, then nodded. No, he said. I suppose I'm not. He didn't run, didn't argue. He simply walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the night like a man who just closed a chapter. And I stood there watching him disappear into the dark, knowing full well, men like that don't vanish. They pause. The door eased shut behind the man in the leather coat, but the weight he carried didn't leave with him. It lingered, like smoke after fire, the kind that clings to your clothes and your conscience. Detective Soria stepped deeper into the foyer, taking a slow glance at the table, the photograph, the envelope. His team stayed near the entrance, silent, efficient, but ready. He say what he wanted? Soria asked, voice low but direct. He didn't need to, I replied. He was just here to remind me that my son's debt doesn't die with an arrest warrant. Soria nodded once, as if he'd heard that sentence 100 times before. But then his eyes met mine and stayed there. Your son made a lot of bad choices, he said. But the fallout's coming your way whether you like it or not. I'm not looking to run, I said. No, he murmured. I don't think you are. We both stood in that entryway a moment longer than necessary, the silence between us thick with shared understanding. He was a man who'd seen families turn into court cases. I was a man who'd just survived being turned into a signature. Behind us, Maria stepped cautiously into view, eyes flicking between us, her presence quiet but grounding. She still held the folder, the one with documents they never got me to sign. I turned to her. You still want out of this house? She hesitated for half a second, then nodded. Yes, but not alone. You won't be, I said. You never were. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. She had cried in silence for too many nights under this roof already. Tonight, she chose to stand. Soria turned to her. We'll place you under temporary protection. You'll be contacted about formal testimony. But tonight, you're safe. Maria exhaled like someone letting go of 10 years of breath. I reached for my coat from the hall stand. It still smelled like home, not this house, but the one I left behind. The one Nora filled with music and cinnamon and warnings I never listened to until it was almost too late. You need a place to go? I asked her, watching her face carefully. She looked at me like she wasn't sure whether to answer truthfully. So I made it easier. I've got 7 restaurants, I said. One of them needs a manager. Full pay. No uniforms. No yes, sir, no, sir. Just honesty and grit. You've already proven you've got both. Her lips parted, stunned. I don't, Mr. Farewell. I don't even know what to say. Start with yes, I said softly. You saved me tonight. It's my turn. Behind us, Soria's team began clearing the space, collecting the evidence, photographing the glassware, documenting the crime scene that had worn the mask of a family dinner. But I was done watching, done standing still. I opened the door once more, this time to leave, not to let someone in. The wind had picked up, scattering dry leaves across the stone path like torn-up pages from a book I didn't want to read anymore. I looked over my shoulder one last time. The mansion didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a warning. The cold hit harder this time. Not the weather, the silence, the kind that settles in after justice walks out the door, and you're left staring at the ruins of something that used to be called family. Maria followed a few steps behind me, arms wrapped around herself, not from the chill, but from everything she was leaving behind. Her heels clicked against the stone like punctuation marks on a sentence neither of us wanted to finish. Behind us, the lights in the mansion were dimming, one by one, like a stage after the curtain call. Nothing left but echoes and crumbs. Detective Soria remained by the gate, nodding toward an unmarked cruiser idling at the corner. Officer Rhodes will escort her to the safe house tonight. Temporary but secure. I nodded. Maria looked at me, eyes searching for something, maybe a signal that this wasn't all some impossible dream. I stepped forward and pulled my wallet from my coat. From behind an old business card, I slid out a key. 3rd floor. Apartment above the Gable Street location. It's clean, it's quiet, and it's yours until we figure out the rest. Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted it, clutching it like something sacred. I don't know how to repay you, she whispered. You already did, I said. The cruiser pulled away gently, its red tail lights casting a soft glow down the hill as it disappeared into the city's quiet night. And then I was alone. The air was still. I stood at the edge of the driveway for a long time, long enough to remember who I used to be before this evening began. The man who wore old cologne because it reminded him of her. The man who still used a chip mug every night because it was Nora's. The man who believed family could be broken but not rotten. But belief isn't truth. Belief can be buried under debt, and trust can be drained one signature at a time. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. There was no voice, only breathing. Tense, heavy, fast. Then one sentence, spoken like it had been rehearsed. He's not going to survive prison. I said nothing. The line went dead. I stared into the dark, heart steady, thoughts racing. Someone had just made their move, and now I'd have to make mine. The wind picked up as I slipped the phone into my coat, but the cold didn't touch me anymore. Not after that call. Not after those words. He's not going to survive prison. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. I turned toward the far end of the estate where the garden path curved through overgrown hedges. The same path my son used to sneak cigarettes when he thought no one was watching. But I always knew, just like I knew that someone out there wasn't finished with me. Because when you burn a bridge with gasoline and secrets, the smoke doesn't just vanish. It trails. I pulled out my second phone, the one with no contact saved, no apps installed, no trace. Just one number. No name. I tapped it. One ring. Then silence. Then her voice. "You got the call?" I closed my eyes. "Yeah." "Then you understand what is to happen now." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I do." There was a long pause, like she was weighing the cost before she let the words drop. "Your son didn't act alone." I froze. "What do you mean?" She exhaled like she'd been waiting years to say it. "I mean the debt wasn't his idea. It started with your name, but not your blood. Someone used you as a door. Logan just kept it open." A chill ran down my spine, not from the air, but from a crack forming in the foundation of everything I thought I understood. "Who?" I asked, voice low. Her reply came soft but brutal. "Look in your late wife's will." I stood there, swallowed by silence, by memory, by something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Doubt. My wife had died clean. Honest. Hadn't she? But grief is blinding. And sometimes you only see what you need to see. I turned on my heel and walked back into the house. Room by room, floor by floor, searching. Drawers flung open. Cabinets unlocked. Old boxes peeled back with trembling fingers. And then, tucked behind the frame of her favorite painting, one I hadn't moved in over a decade, a letter, sealed, addressed to me. My heart pounded as I broke the wax. Inside was her handwriting, and a second envelope. Inside that, a document, not a will, a confession, written in Nora's hand, signed, and dated 2 weeks before her final hospital stay. I read the first paragraph, and my knees buckled. The family account had been moved under a fake charity, created by her brother. For Logan, she had known. She had known everything, and she had kept it hidden, from guilt, from love, or maybe from fear. The page slipped from my hand and fluttered the floor like an autumn leaf surrendering to gravity. Behind me, the wind slammed the door shut, and I finally understood. The betrayal didn't start with Logan. It started with the woman I loved. I stood there, frozen, the paper still clutched in my fist, the ink already bleeding into my skin like poison. Outside, the world was quiet. Inside, everything I ever believed was coming undone, line by line, sentence by sentence. The woman I had mourned for years, the woman I thought had carried my burdens, protected our son, fought the sickness with courage, had also lied, and not just once. The signature on the false foundation papers matched hers. The charity wasn't for cancer research. It was a laundering tool. Her brother, damn him, was the architect, but she had been the gate. My heart didn't just break. It recoiled. I sank to the floor, back against the wall, staring at the confession like it might rewrite itself if I just waited long enough. But truth doesn't flinch. The walls of that house, once warm, now felt like paper, thin, dishonest, hollow. Every photo, every memory, every tender moment with Nora flickered through my mind like someone had taken a match to our scrapbook. I remembered her final breath, how tightly I'd held her hand, how I whispered, "You can go in peace. Everything's okay." But it hadn't been. She hadn't gone in peace. She'd gone knowing she left behind a fuse already lit. I couldn't stay in that room another second. I shoved the letter into my coat pocket and walked. No, staggered. Out the back, down the slope behind the estate, where the woods swallowed streetlight and secrets equally. The night felt colder now, darker, like it knew something I didn't. I made the call. Same number. One ring. Her voice again. Calm. Measured. You found it. Yes, I said. And now you understand. I understand one thing. I whispered. What? I paused. That sometimes we love ghosts more than people. Another pause. She didn't respond. Didn't have to. We both knew what came next. I looked up through the trees. The sky was clear, stars sharp, moon unblinking. And in that silence, I made my decision. Not revenge, not redemption. Something deeper, something final. I stood beneath the branches as the last wind of winter kissed my face. For the first time in decades, I felt weightless, not because the pain had passed, but because I had finally let it come in, let it fill every hollow space I tried so hard to seal shut. I had lost my son. I had lost my wife. Twice, once to death, and once to truth. The ground beneath my feet was damp, soft, like it too had been crying for years. And as I stood in the dark, I didn't ask the stars for guidance. I didn't ask God for peace. I asked myself one question. What now? The answer didn't come as words. It came as a memory. Elisa's hand on mine that night in the hospital, before she became the woman who betrayed me. She had leaned in, whispered something as Nora lay sleeping, tubes hissing beside her. She said some love is louder when it's silent. I hadn't understood it then. Now, I did. I walked back to the house as dawn broke behind the hills, soft pink slicing to the black, the kind of morning that doesn't ask for permission to begin again. The place looked different now, not because anything had changed, but because I had. Inside, I made coffee. Just one cup. Strong. Bitter. Honest. Maria came downstairs a few minutes later, hair tied back, eyes tired but calm. She's gone, she said quietly. Packed during the night. Took only what mattered. I nodded. We sat in silence. Not awkward. Not tense. Just still. I passed her the envelope. The police are what they need, I said. But this is yours to decide. She looked at it, but didn't open it. Sometimes knowing the truth is enough. Sometimes holding it is heavier than bearing it. I'm going to sell the estate, I said. She looked up, surprised. And go where? I smiled for the first time in days. Somewhere without echoes. I walked upstairs one last time. The bedroom still smelled like old perfume and dust. I packed a single bag. Clothes. One photo. And the letter. Before I left, I placed something on Nora's side of the bed. A tiny frame with a single line scribbled in my handwriting. Love is louder when it's silent. Then I closed the door. And this time it didn't slam. It whispered, the way healing always begins.